Okay, guys, here we go. Buckle up. Welcome back to another video from Pink Tourmaline. And this is a wild one. This is a wild one. I've got to give credit to multiple people for directing me towards this resource, and I will do that in this video. And also, I want you guys, there's going to be a lot of really interesting stuff here, a lot of stuff that is going to resonate with many things that have been covered on this channel. But I also want you to take everything that I talk about today from this particular article with a grain of salt. I don't know a ton about this resource and this article, but Tina and Karen do. And Tina and Karen are actually, let me back up a little bit. They even themselves, I'm going to play a clip of them talking about this article and talking about the resource so you can get a better idea of where this information has come from and as such, how to view it, how to think about it. Because this is by no means am I saying that this information is gospel and this is 100% correct by any means. So we're going to be talking about all of that. But what's super fascinating in this article and this breakdown is, as I mentioned, this is talking about a government interest in all of the topics that we discuss, which basically should be the most important and interesting topic on the planet because it has to do with everything, the full picture of how it all works together. And sadly, it seems that it works in a way, I'm talking about the grand scheme of existence, and within the matrix, it works against us for the most part to utilize us as a resource. And I used to always think that the biggest cover up on the planet had to do with extraterrestrials. In fact, I think Stephen Greer would always say that there's nothing of a higher clearance than information about ETs. And although ETs are woven into the tapestry of the grand scheme of things, I think actually the most probably highest security that where you would need the absolute highest clearance in terms of topics to discuss would actually be this topic, not just about what's happening in the physical realm and in this dimension and with ETs and technology and all that stuff. That's a piece of the system. But what really is important is how does it all play together? Because we know our lives are finite. We know our lives end. Whatever is happening here, if it's just one and done, as so many religions proclaim, Christianity, Islam, etc., then what is the big deal about the way that power is laid out, the way that the world is structured, the way that technology is divvied up? It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Well, what would be the matter? We're just here for a particular test. And then once we pass that test, we move on to whatever it may be, the next dimension. But when we're talking about a reincarnation trap, a system that aims to keep us here over and over for using us to extract the type of energy, loosh, whatever it may be. Now we really have to pay attention to what's going on. We really need to understand it. Hence why I'm studying it like crazy on this channel, because it's for us. It's for us so that we can choose what we want. And we're not just going along with the program, going along with the plan, regardless of whether or not it benefits us, regardless of whether or not it is our true destiny. So anyways, pretty wild stuff. And we're basically getting into how the government potentially, or these super top black projects, are connected with the afterlife, with the matrix. But they have to be at some level. They have to be. If this is all true, right? It has to be. Of course, that it has to be woven in. But maybe it's even beyond it. I mean, maybe it's just the super upper levels of whatever organizations are running the planet at the very tippy tops. Maybe only it's like a need to know basis, just like everything else is compartmentalized. But my point is, there has to be some understanding of what is going on in the grand scheme of things at some level. It may be so high that it barely trickles down. I don't know, but it has to be. Anyways, this article talks about all that. This article talks about the knowledge. It also talks about projects involving near-death experiences, induced near-death experiences, what the purpose of those are. It's just wild. So really wild stuff. We're going to get into all of it. I extracted a bunch of excerpts. Before we start, I want to give a big shout out to Missy Peckham. Hope I'm pronouncing your name right. This is the individual who sent me the video from Tena and Karen discussing this article. And I was watching the video, and then it kind of blew me away. Then I said, wait a minute, they have a link to the article. Let me read it for myself. So I've got two little quick excerpts from Tena and Karen, just explaining this resource. I think they're more familiar with it than I am. I've also got some excerpts as well, just so you can understand what this resource is, where this article was posted and where this dialogue was put out there to the world. And I want everybody to hear this so you can understand the source and then judge it accordingly. Because again, I can't say this is gospel. I can't say how much of this is true, 100%, 0%, 50%, 70%. I don't know. But I will say, because of the overlaps with so many things we're discussing, I'm paying attention to it, and that's why I wanted to share it with everybody. Okay, so first of all, who wrote this article or who posted it to this website called Just Paste It? This is Tena and Karen in their own words.
It's an article that I found. It was posted by this group that came out a couple years ago called We Are Sovereign. And I don't know, there's a lot of kind of shady energy around them. They came out talking about like the digital currency system and, it's going to come any day now. And there's these different tiers to the system, from, just common people to sovereign people. And the sovereign people are mostly, celebrities, politicians, well-known people. And they have some kind of like insiders that work to set up this system, the digital currency system, that are watching from the inside, like what's happening and how the system is being set up. This is what they claim. And that these insiders can potentially change your status from, say, common to sovereign, so that you won't be controlled in the way that the rest of us will be. As far as that goes, I don't know. I feel like I don't know how to feel about it. I really don't have much of an opinion about it, except I'm very skeptical.
Okay. Kind of agree with her. I don't know too much about this digital currency thing. I don't know too much about this idea of the sovereigns, and really what she's talking about, by the way, too, which I have taken a bunch of excerpts about this, is I think she's really referring to the control that these quote unquote sovereigns will have over people or the rest of us or our souls in another realm called the astral planet. So we're going to get into that. That's discussed here. But yeah, with the digital currency and this whole thing that they're talking about as a control system, I don't know too much about it. I didn't really take too many excerpts about that in particular. I don't even know if I can say I'm skeptical, or I just don't know. This is not something that I've ever heard about or read about before. So I didn't really choose to dive into it too much in this video, but okay. So I think that's helpful. That gives a little context and a little bit more on who wrote this article. So the post appears to come from a group called We Are Sovereign, which is formerly associated with Oculum Labs. I don't know what that is. And the post claimed to reveal secret information about a future digital currency social credit system they call Obsidian, along with broader claims involving governments, banks, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, spiritual warfare, and a supposed cabal. Okay, so this is actually generated from ChatGPT, just to give you more context. Gideon, so this is the gentleman that is speaking, that is basically the insider that is giving us all this intel. It's an anonymous or pseudonymous person whom the group describes as having a background in high-level intelligence. His real name, credentials, employer, and precise background are not publicly disclosed, right? So this is the anonymous source that's talking and disclosing all of the information that you're about to hear. Why does this resonate, at least with Tena and Karen?
A lot of what is said in here does ring true to me. Especially because it does coincide with a lot of the things that we've either suspected or had insights into, or even seen in sessions, especially when it comes to NDEs. Because I've always said, like, I know that these NDEs are being induced, right? So that these people can come back with this information. It's like Matrix propaganda, right? Of like, go into the light, go through the tunnel, everything's amazing, it's all love and bliss and like all that kind of talk. And I know this because I had an experience for myself that I know was manipulated and almost NDE. Like, I didn't fully leave my body, but I was like this close to it. And I know that that was induced. So That said, like, I always suspected that it was being induced by, we'll just call them the archons for lack of a better word, because there's so many words for these beings that they're here, right? And they are manipulating and controlling humanity. But I never considered that the government could be doing it or experimenting in that way. So I thought that, like, that side of it was really interesting to me.
And that is what we're going to talk about, right? First of all, obviously, she's talking about NDEs being induced. Really, what I think what she's saying is being sanitized, or being these special types of experiences that are set up for manipulative purposes, which is going to be discussed in this article. And then the really fascinating part, but also kind of, you have to believe it's happening at some level, whether it's in the super upper echelons of the government or at the highest level of whatever the organizations are that run the planet. You have to assume that there's some communication with the astral, whether it's these induced NDEs or what. It has to be happening to some degree. So it's surprising in that I've never heard anybody else talk about it, but it's also not surprising because you just assume something like that has to be going on. Okay. So let's get into the mix. Here we go. Here's all the excerpts with my little titles, and we're going to get into it and we're going to discuss as we go along. So Bill is the interviewer. Gideon is the source in bold. I'd like to talk about it. What did you learn? This is in terms of inducing NDEs. What I was told is coming from a senior scientist on a major classified project for a certain European government. It involves NDEs, or near-death experiences. What does the project entail? They are, in short, inducing NDEs and directing the departed soul to carry out missions. The soul then returns to the body and they're brought back to life. The scientist is scared because of some of what is being said, what is being brought back. Okay. What else can you say about what he said? What are they learning about the afterlife? I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to talk about this from the start. How do they induce the NDEs, and who are they doing this to? The individuals involved are always under the age of 12. Very interesting. They are chosen for a variety of reasons, one of which is they must demonstrate very high intellectual acuity for their age. The government needs those who can follow instructions. And these people under 12, they are solely used because their soul can be dislodged from the body and the body can be brought back to life with a very high success rate. The success rate for adults is far too low, but has been extensively tested on individuals who might have been disappeared individuals taken out of society. So this is crazy, dark, scary, but the reason why I would say it rings true, and probably why Tena and Karen think this would ring true as well, is we do notice that there seems to be a greater connection to past lives, right? We see that in many books and research of kids under a certain age, under the age of 5, remembering past lives, and then those memories end up fading. So that part seems to ring true, that younger kids, younger people might be more into that. They might be more in touch with these other psychic abilities or these other feelings or these other connections to their true identity. And that slowly fades the more enmeshed you get with the matrix and the more conditioning programming you have. Like, it makes complete sense, as sad and weird as that sounds, is that they're using those types of people for this testing. When do souls bind with the body? So this is, again, something that Gideon talks about as to why they're using younger people for this. It is high, and higher the younger they are, meaning the ability to successfully carry out these induced NDEs. This is because it appears the soul and the human brain do not fully fuse together until about the age of 3 and entirely by the age of 12. I do not know the complete science behind it, just a general outline. This is what I was told. There's a lot of interesting stuff as well. Just buckle up in this article about the science of the soul. What is the soul exactly in terms of energy? How is it contained in the body? Which I, again, just found super interesting to be discussed in this scientific way by apparently an insider, where they've studied this type of stuff. So, okay, what is the purpose of these missions that they're carrying out? Did he give any hints, idea of what the mission is? What is the government trying to do in the afterlife? Explore it, understand it. No. They already understand it fully, Bill. There's no need for that or to explore it, which, see, that makes sense to me. They should be on the inside of this at some level. How would they just be confused about it? It has been charted and studied probably for centuries by the Cabal. Cabal is the folks at the very top. The missions are very specific, and the children or their souls go to specific places, which exist in what is called the astral plane, and another place, the astral planet. So we're going to get to this in a little bit later, but apparently there's the astral plane, and then there's an astral planet, which I didn't know about, never heard about. Do I immediately think this is gospel and it has to be true? I don't know, but there are some overlaps when they describe the astral planet, I think, to what Tony from Insights with Tony was describing, or it could be the astral plane. I don't know, but just keep an open mind here. They go and do things, tasks, complete orders, sometimes deliver messages, sometimes conduct surveillance. That is the most he would tell me. There's more, but it was not told to me. It was told to the group I referred to. So maybe this is their way of communicating with the astral. Maybe it's not a direct line of communication. It's not as, sometimes if they want to deliver a message, they have to go about it this way. I don't know. I'm just theorizing, but okay. So what is the soul? Here's where we get into some of these fascinating scientific discussions. Once the central nervous system, okay. So first they're talking about how they induce the NDEs, and then we're going to get into what is the soul. Once the central nervous system shuts off and all electrical activity ceases, the soul is released, which is a high energy ball of protons, something I do not know how to explain, nor do my friend. We do not fully know, excuse me, how consciousness somehow exists within this ball of energy, but it does, and resides in the body, we believe, in the brain, near or within the pineal gland. It actually exists within 2 or 3 dimensions beyond this one at the same time as well. Once you die, where does the soul go? Bill asks. It expands and moves on to another dimension. Our dimension usually fades quickly for the soul as it observes its surroundings. It moves onto the astral plane, a dimension that overlays our own, that we cannot see, feel, or detect virtually at all while here alive, but it is right beside us, which is interesting. I mean, that makes sense. Dimensions can be right on top of each other and you're traveling interdimensionally, but it's not really a distance thing. You're just phasing into another sort of frequency, I suppose. So that seems to track. But I thought it was interesting, this discussion of what is the soul, because obviously it's never talked about in mainstream science. I think obviously by intention, by design, but there's got to be a way to detect it for sure that is well understood, I imagine. So I thought that was cool. Also interesting, how does the body contain the soul? We hear in Gnosticism and other types of philosophies that it's almost as if our souls are stuck or trapped intentionally by the design of the body, and it's kind of discussed here. The body is a carrier or container for the soul, and the soul is trapped inside it during a lifetime. It cannot escape, move, or do much of anything. It is wrapped up and contained by the central nervous system electromagnetic force field that all bodies produce. Our bodies are actually electricity generators, though this is not widely published or discussed. It appears that is the mechanism that keeps the soul in place. In terms of detecting it, there are some methods, but these are highly suppressed by the cabal, right? The other dimensions can be detected, but again, the methods are suppressed. By the way, going back to what they said earlier about inducing the NDEs and stopping, I guess, the electricity or the electric flow so the soul can come out. It kind of reminds me a little bit about Darius J. Wright's methods for going out of body, where he takes his body to a point of effectively like right on the verge of death. So that kind of tracks with the way that he describes how he does it, just does it naturally, I suppose. All right. The Astral Plane by Gideon. Most souls do not stay in this area for long. They move on to the astral world. This is the astral planet. Okay. This is a separate place, though, in the same dimension. The scientist I spoke with said it does not overlay Earth at all, but it is connected in some way. The soul would go through a tunnel of sorts to reach it. There they would find an Earth-like planet very different from our own, but also familiar in certain ways. It is in the astral dimension, but souls can appear material-like and experience material things if they choose, and they do. This sounds exactly like what Tony described when he was having his OBEs and he goes to this plane. He saw there's like a hotel or an apartment. People are eating food, which makes no sense because you don't need food. There's like TVs, there are rooms, there's bathrooms, which makes no sense. So my theory was that this is an in-between place, getting people primed and ready to come back to Earth. Maybe it is, I don't know. But again, this is another alternative possibility that it is another planet, but an astral or energy type of planet, or a thought. It's effectively a projection of collective consciousness, which we're going to get to in other sections a little bit more about what that means. I was told it is dystopian in nature with the top-down ruling hierarchy. I was told some Hollywood movies specifically show it, describe it. The laws of nature are different, gravity and so on. People can read thoughts and walk through walls, but the rules in place do not always allow it. There's a strict police state in place. There's extensive drug use, alcoholism, sex, and prostitution. All of this takes place because the soul can materialize certain things and experience the third dimension or a simulation of it, like here on Earth. So again, I know this might sound completely insane, but if you guys have been following Insights with Tony and heard his video where he talks about all of this, it tracks. Again, what do I talk about all the time on this channel? That what are we looking for? We're looking for overlaps across all these different various accounts. So I think some of this stuff tracks, as bizarre as it may seem. All right. So what's the power structure on the astral planet? They enforce rules, though otherwise souls could exert more influence on their surroundings, materialize things using thought alone, and so on. The power structure would break down. How they maintain the power structure, it seems, and why is the biggest secret of all. One so incredible, this scientist was in fear of his life if he'd even thought or spoke the words. And then I'm going to come back to that in a second. What do you mean if he thought them? His thoughts can be read if the government sends a child on an NDE mission to investigate him. He believes they have done such things to one of his colleagues who ended up taken away. While the child may have only been out for 10 minutes in the astral, he can spend hours or even days investigating someone like his colleague and examining his thoughts. So he was worried they would read his thoughts. But anyways, let's go back to this. How they maintain the power structure and why is the biggest secret of all. So what's interesting, the reason why this is particularly interesting is because nowhere in this discussion, they do talk about energy harvesting at some point, but they don't talk about Lush. They don't talk about the extraction of our emotional energy to maintain the system. And so I wonder if that is there and the scientist was aware of this, but they didn't want to say or mention this, as this would be, again, the biggest secret, the why, because us knowing the why would give us incentive to effectively leave or break out of the system, right? But I thought that was really, really interesting that right there is the biggest secret, and that makes sense. That tracks. Which is why I say the topic we're discussing right now is the most important topic, period, because it has to do, it covers everything. It explains everything, potentially. Assuming that we've got the theory nailed down 100%, which, I mean, obviously, right, it's still a work in progress. And I think we always need to remember that it's constantly a work in progress. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the astral planet. So if a soul ends up there, is it still a soul or does it have a body? It can materialize as a body and it must remain as such. So there's rules saying you have to be in this body form, I guess. There are laws against shape-shifting and certain powers are only afforded to the hierarchy. How can they enforce that? Because they have the same powers. They can read thoughts. There's mass surveillance far greater than there is here because, for example, you can see through walls there if you want. So while a soul who ends up there has more powers than we have here, because of the nature of the dimension, the power structure also has far greater powers. It equalizes. I guess what they're saying is on the astral planet, the way that authority is exerted is kind of effectively the same, even though we might have more, theoretically more sovereignty, but it balances out, I guess, is what they're saying. Why is this astral dimension like that? It seems very weird to me. Different laws of nature apply there. Laws of motion, gravity, cause and effect, they are vastly different. Thought itself forms the reality, in fact. The cities, the towns, everything is formed by thought on the astral planet. We've heard this before. The power of consciousness, the power of thought in the astral, creating things, manifesting things. How that structure remains in place is due to the power structure and enforcement in place. Without it, the planet would dissolve into various thought forms produced by the millions of souls within it, all creating their own world. This is not allowed. This reminds me of the concept of egregores, if I'm pronouncing that right. Almost like a consciousness brought to life from collective thoughts. I don't know. I should add, this astral planet is just one place among this entire dimension, which is vast in its size, extending across the universe and including countless other worlds, ones that are not traps or controlled by a cabal. To get to them is another matter. Is this astral dimension where God resides? So I found this super interesting too, because they actually talk about God. No, God resides in dimensions above it, but God is present in all dimensions as well. And I really wanted to include this because as I've been diving deeper and deeper into this material, one of the big questions that I have is, exactly what is God, or what is the source from which we come, or is that source literally us? And is there no still Godhead figure as such? It's just simply we're almost confused or manipulated to forgetting that we are him, if that makes sense, just fragmented out. So anyways, I thought this was interesting that they do talk about here a separate God entity that we still potentially could be all divine sparks of, but it seems to be a separate and like separate from us consciousness, if that makes sense. So I thought that was interesting. God is present in all dimensions. They talk more about God, by the way, as well. All right. So why are people on the astral planet? So Bill asks, why would anyone agree to being there on this astral planet you're talking about? So the source says a few reasons. Those who are there are often trapped there, often lured there and trapped there. So again, this matches up with what we always talk about with being trapped or being tricked. Those who are there are bonded by agreements which are taking place in this life, which is the most important and chilling factor one should consider. Those who are there, some of them want to be there because of the benefits, the power, the hierarchy they can join and move up within. I'm speaking mostly of cabal members. Others are drawn to the rampant sex, drugs, gambling, hedonistic lifestyle, one that does not require hard work, one without consequences, and since no one can actually die or be harmed physically there, they are drawn to this only to find later that they have made the most grave mistake imaginable. There are other ways, though, the cabal can harm you and hurt you in the astral, other ways that are terrifying and possibly worse than death or torture here. Those who are there know that, so they comply with the police forces. And then Bill also says, I guess the movie Blade Runner is close to what this looks like. I've never seen Blade Runner. I actually might watch it as a result. But so yeah, one of the things that's really interesting is talking about this idea of talking about agreements. Those who are there are bonded by agreements which are taking place in this life. And I thought about that, and it really got me thinking about what, if this is true, obviously, take it with a grain of salt, but what are these agreements? Like, they're probably not explicit, overt agreements. And it could even be agreements that we're entering into by not doing something, by not stepping up, by not saying certain things or stopping certain actions, right? And I don't know exactly where I'm going with this. It's just food for thought. It just makes me think more critically about what we do on a daily basis. It reminds me of the conversations that we have about living a life with integrity, being honest, not only to other people, but with ourselves. So are those little agreements, like every time we break a bond with somebody or with ourselves or with whoever, is that some sort of an explicit or implicit agreement? I don't know the answer to that, but it's got me thinking about this. And maybe those that live as close to a pure life of integrity, maybe those off the reservation that aren't bound by the laws and strictures of society, those are the ones that are completely free of these agreements and free to exit and do whatever as they choose. And we're going to come back to that because they actually talk about these quote unquote like off-grid people later on. Those are the ones that are free. So it's just a lot to think about. Like I said, a lot of this resonates on a deeper level. I'm not even saying that all of it necessarily corroborates or can be corroborated with stuff that we've read about or heard about from other people or read in other books, but something resonates, I think, inside somewhere. Call it discernment, call it what you will, but okay. NDEs are sanitized experiences. Now, here's where they talk about NDEs, not the induced NDEs, but real NDEs. And this isn't much of a news flash, I feel like, for everybody in our community, but I want to share it nevertheless. Does the cabal want this astral planet to be secret? Yes, they very much do. They prefer we humans either believe in materialism, in religion, in New Age beliefs, or in the versions of NDEs that they offer and show, which are rolled into New Age. They do not want people to believe anything I'm saying right now. How do you mean in terms of the cabal wanting us to believe the NDEs? Most NDEs are sanitized experiences of the individuals so that when they come back, all of us believe a certain experience awaits us, which was exactly what we've all been saying for the longest time. That's what the drum we've been beating for a very long time. Bill asks, but it doesn't, meaning this experience. Gideon says, it does, but it's not the full truth. Many will experience a so-called light and tunnel. They may speak to God or Jesus, but these are entirely deceptions. Exactly what we've been saying. Only those washed in the blood of Christ who have full salvation may bypass these traps, but even then, my guide said, God's holy chosen few are being trapped and deceived upon death. So this is also interesting too, because you guys remember I just had that guy Sethlehem on here, and then now all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere in this article, they're talking about the washed in the blood of Christ. I'm curious to know exactly what that means. It probably means in some figurative sense, obviously. But anyways, how is this cabal allowed to mimic Jesus, to make a fake Jesus in the afterlife? Because the realm is not ruled by God, it is ruled by Satan. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. When we die, we are still in satanic realms. People do not have knowledge on how to escape these areas. Some even believe they're in godly realms. Remember, Satan is an angel of light. You must remember that. Interesting, true, but God isn't darkness. He is the opposite of light. Is he? It is nuance. The simplest way, Satan is copying and mimicking the pure love of God. I can't believe God allows us, though, to allow people to stay trapped even after death. We allow it, Gideon says. We allow it. Though the contracts we have made in this life, through the contracts we have made in this life, the compromises. The cabal believes we belong to the cabal. It appears God has allowed this to happen because people have free will. People can choose, and people have chosen the beast. This all tracks with what Intuitive Underground was saying as well, is in that it's not wanting to interfere with free will. And there's some signing off here. This also tracks with the idea that a lot of things that are happening to us are being shown to us, so we need to sign off on it. And maybe there'd be some issue or some problem with the structure of everything if that was bypassed, and if we weren't actually explicitly or implicitly in some way signing off on these things. Now, going back to this realm being ruled by Satan, that's the stuff that I'm very curious about. Is this just a naming scheme difference? Like, right, a lot of us we talk about it as the archons. Are they saying is this idea of Satan almost synonymous with the demiurge or Yaldabaoth? I imagine so. I don't know 100%, but anyways, these are just questions of mine. But there's definitely a tie to Christianity in this conversation here. They're talking about Satan being an angel of light. I think that's part of the Christian narrative. So I found that interesting as well. Take it for what it's worth. Okay, now they talk about those that reject the beast. What would it look like if a person did not choose the beast in this life? And again, I think choosing the beast means signing whatever that means, these contracts, and partaking in this whole system. So what would that person look like as someone we could model? That is a very good question, Gideon says. My guide has spoken about this a bit. She said that that person would not participate at all in the money system. And that is key. Like, how do you do that on this planet? That person would probably have a small farm, live off the land, and never use money. They would only barter. I've asked how many of these people exist today, and she said no more than about 350,000 on the entire planet. She said they will go directly to God upon death. Is that the pleroma? I don't know. But at least to me, that sounds like exiting the matrix. She said the cabal also sometimes tries to find these people and get them to use money and technology. Interestingly enough, they usually reject it or never use it if it's given to them. Does the cabal try to force it on them? No. The cabal gains far more power if they willingly do it. That is what the cabal wants. If they turn away and go about their nomadic ways living off the land, the cabal tends to leave them be. Again, that highlights and underscores the idea that they need, that we are powerful, that they need us to sign on the dotted line, to accept, to agree. Otherwise, who knows exactly how that would unfold. But I imagine otherwise the whole system would unravel. And again, this all goes back to the same idea of why is there so much manipulation all around us? Why is there manipulation in the afterlife? Why is there so many lies on this planet? And the uplifting part of that answer is we must be pretty darn powerful. I keep going back to that. We must be pretty darn powerful if they got to manipulate us and lie to us and confuse us in so many different ways. I was thinking, let me talk about this real quickly as well. Just a quick aside before we go up to this next slide. Who ends up on the astral planet? I was thinking about this, and this may not be a major revelation for most people, but if you look at so many of these issues that are brought up and discussed and made to be so controversial in the new, and I hope I'm not offending people when I bring this stuff up, okay? I'm trying to make observations here. Some people, because I could see some people being like, no, This is an important issue, and how dare you ignore it? And I may be wrong here, okay? But this is just an observation I'm making. Some of the things that are brought up and then people fight tirelessly about, and it almost feels kind of divided, like 50% one way, 50% the other way. How do you know? Like, let's talk about the. I'm even scared to bring this up because I don't want people to get mad. But remember, and maybe it's still somewhat like this, but there was a period where the people wanting to become trans was such a hot topic, and there were so many people that thought this was a terrible thing, and that it's going to this, that, and the other, leading to so many different things, the pronouns discussion and everything. And other people were like, no, this is the people that are suppressing this, they're so terrible, and they need to just let people live and do their thing. This was not discussed ever prior to that I remember growing up. And then all of a sudden it was everywhere. And when I think about it now, I feel like these types of issues are brought up and spread through the media when they're perfectly designed and engineered, where there is no right answer. Like it's not even something that we should be discussing. It's just something that pertains to a super small part of the planet, and what they choose to do is what they choose to do. But all of a sudden it got brought to the forefront of the world, and then people were arguing tirelessly about, yeah, but what about this? But what about that? Going back and forth. And I thought to myself, or recently thought to myself, it's not about a right answer and us getting to it or hiding the right answer. It's about engineering this thing properly enough where it just creates fighting, and it creates chaos, and it creates distraction. And there's so many other issues that I can bring up. Like I said, I'm a little bit reluctant to keep bringing it. Well, fine, I'll bring up another one. Abortion, I think, is a big one too, where it's just there's just split, and people are going back and forth so hardcore. And I'm not saying it's a completely trivial issue, but my point is it's brought to the forefront, and it creates this divide and the split and this chaos. And there probably are realistically things that are more important. Case in point, what we're talking about here, the true nature of reality, what is really going on with our lives and with our energy and with our souls, and how do we take control of that? But then this is brought to the forefront, and we're just stuck in this back and forth, and that takes all just creates so much distraction, takes all our attention away. Anyways, that's just an aside, something that I wanted to throw in at some point in this presentation. You let me know your thoughts on that. But yeah, I was really thinking about that in terms of continuing to keep us in the dark. Like, these are brought up, and then the world goes crazy for however long until the next controversial, crazy issue. God, we got to debate. We got to do all this. It's like, just like Howdy McCoskey tells us, no, maybe the answer is just to step away, unplug, turn off the TV. Okay, back to this. Who ends up on the astral planet? Would we end up there to begin with? I mean, without all of this, is that where we would go? Not necessarily. Most people die and they follow the light into the satanic reincarnation trap. Talking about the trap, here we go. They enjoy a wonderful time there in the astral, which is a lovely place, bathed in white light and artificial love, artificial keyword. But then they are manipulated and pushed by their so-called guides to go back to Earth. This is what we talk about over and over. It's briefly brought up, but worth highlighting. And I think it's important for especially a lot of folks that are of the belief that, no, the NDEs are true, and this is it's all love and light, and it's beautiful. Just think about it. Just food for thought that's being discussed here as well, because I haven't seen it many other places. And this insider is talking about that exactly, which I think a lot of us think there's a lot of merit to this idea. That is an entirely different experience from the astral planet. By being in that cycle, at least the soul has a chance to escape and to find God. Once one arrives to the astral planet, it appears there is no escape. So this is a little scary, granted, right? When I read this, but I guess this is what he has heard. And we're going to get into in a moment if I actually believe that it appears there is no escape. Do I really think such a thing could be true? Short answer is no, but we'll dive into that a little bit more. But anyways, so we have the reincarnation trap, and you can kind of the loop. We're kind of going back and forth like we're in right now. And then outside of that, there's a possibility that you could go to this astral planet, but that's again part of the system, part of the matrix. So now we're going to talk about, can you escape the astral planet? So he says, if you end up on the astral planet, can you find God from there? By every account, by every source I know of, from my guide as well, the answer is no. That is the ultimate trap, the ultimate endpoint. And it also has a type of hell there below it. Is that where hell actually is? Yes, Gideon says. So if you end up there, you can't get out. You can't reach God. Gideon says, I do not know fully. I've just been told that to escape from there, it is nearly impossible. Nearly is the key word. Why, Bill says? Because if you ended up there, it means you did something in this life to sign a contract over to Satan, to agree to something, to sign over your soul, to allow yourself to be compromised in some way. There must be a way out. I still think there is a way to salvation. There has to be. If we truly seek God and we want out of the nightmare, I think we can get out, don't you? Well, yes and no, Gideon says. I used to feel how you felt. I'm very uncertain now. That is why we have to fight Obsidian. This is the digital currency thing that I literally don't know too much about, so I'm not going to comment on it. He says, but anyways, if we do nothing, then we are complying with Satan. How can we be with God if we comply with Satan? Bill says, I guess we can't. I guess that wouldn't make sense. Gideon says, now do you see why I am very, very concerned? Bill says, yes, I do. There's no easy way out here. I just thought the blood of Christ saved us. Gideon says it does, but we keep washing it off because we keep participating in this satanic system. Bill says, I get that. Does your guy think our team will be okay because of what we're doing? Gideon says, yes, because we are fighting back. We want to destroy everything, all of Satan's plans. There is no higher virtue. Okay, so let's pause here. And again, I'm not reading. There's still a lot to question, to ponder, and this is not gospel by any means. Like Tena and Karen said, they're skeptical of a lot of stuff in this article. And I'm skeptical too. Now, when we talk about this idea of once you're there, you're effectively stuck. Now, they said nearly impossible. That's the key word. I've talked about this at length. If we are infinite in our existence, which I believe we are, divine sparks, energy cannot be destroyed, all that. How can we be trapped? It is impossible to trap something infinitely because there will always be another time forward. And I know maybe time is a construct here, but you get what I'm saying. There's infinite. If you're infinite, there are infinite possibilities to do infinite things, to infinitely escape. So I don't buy that. Just from basically a mathematical perspective, that does not make sense to me. And a lot of this is framed through this Christian lens. Is that because it's true? Is that because they are Christian and they're seeing things through that lens? Again, like, I don't know. Take it with a grain of salt. I would imagine the latter, but I don't know for sure. And again, we talk about Satan. Is that just another name for whatever this dark forces or dark entity or AI entity or whatever it may be that's keeping us entrapped within this matrix? Yeah, they could just all be synonyms. Just food for thought. We are distracted from the afterlife. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier about these hot button issues that just create chaos and disarray and back and forth arguing like crazy. So we don't pay attention to the really big question. What is all of this? Forget about politics, right? Forget about these issues within that are part of the system. Let's think about what is the system. That's the big question. Bill says, okay, I have something in my notes here I want to ask you about. We talked about this, and it's how important the afterlife is. Yes. It's something this other group is focused on, and that's going to release information. You told me we need to be thinking about that more. Not our life here. Is that right? We do. We spend our time worried about our time here, our money, our jobs, the news media, the politics, and we are completely ignorant to the fact the bigger picture is what happens after this life to our souls. The cabal wants us focused on the material world here and now and not what comes next. That's exactly right. That's exactly what I was talking about. That's one example. But everything in this life is about, well, you got to plan ahead 10 years, 20 years. What about for eternity? But no, it's like, and then you got to plan for your retirement. Then when you got your retirement, you want to be thinking about your kids or your grandkids or helping them. It's like you're on this conveyor belt and you're always either looking right ahead or right backwards, never looking up, if that makes sense. And you just stay on it right until you go off, and then that's it. And you don't ever get a chance to think about the broader picture. I mean, if you guys just think about it, look, if you're watching this video, you're probably on the same page as me, but it's bananas. We all know that death is coming. We all know that this physical body will cease, but we don't spend barely any time thinking about it. Or if we do, we latch on to a particular religion, something that has existed for a super long time, and that is effectively we are unable to change it or expand upon it by design. And that's just our answer. And then we just go with that, like, we got that part figured out. We just move on. It's like, what is, it's the biggest. I'm not laughing. You know, you get why I'm laughing. I'm laughing because it's absurd. It's not to say that people are crazy for carrying on their lives this way. That is how the system and that is how society is programmed to act. And so you actually feel, you're made to feel crazy if you're like us in this community. But it's bananas. It's bananas. And they made it feel normal. So yeah. Anyways, it's really, really interesting to hear this guy Gideon, say exactly that. That all this stuff is by design to keep us not looking up and just kind of staying on this conveyor belt. It makes perfect sense. Here he talks a little bit about entity interference. Again, this is not my area of expertise, but I found it interesting. How much of a role do entities play in our lives? A significant role, according to my guide, says Gideon. They are always influencing us in small ways. They are everywhere. And that I get, right? If we think they are interdimensional, they could be, again, just like the astrals right next to us. They could be right next to us, monitoring us, sure. Bill says, are they demons? Gideon says there are many forms. Demons are a specific type. Other types are energy farmers, right? So that's the one mention of this idea of Loosh. Others are energy farmers, tricksters, influencers, or dark shadow guides. Demons are more volatile, satanic spirits that cause destruction. But to me, that's just semantics. We're talking about demons or this or that. It's again, entities, maybe with various intent, various motivations, just like we have that existing here on this planet with people. So I don't know why we would have to call one a demon, one of this, one of that. They're just various entities. And it seems like a semantic thing. Whoops. I repeated that slide. Oh, yeah. No, that's it. We're at the end. Wow. Holy smokes. Time flies. That is the end of our presentation. Wild, wild stuff. So much food for thought, especially depending on how much of this is legitimate, which I can't say for sure at all. Like I said at the beginning, is it 0% true, 100% true, 50% true? I don't know. But I think it's fascinating. And I think some of it's going to resonate with you internally as it did with me. Because I think a lot of us believe that many of the things that were mentioned by this purported insider are true and are part of the nature of reality. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, guys. What did you think of this article? What did you think of some of the points I discussed in this video? Let me know. Thank you guys so much for joining. We'll see you in the next one. Take it easy. Oh, and don't forget to join our Discord community. I put that in the description below. Take it easy.